Welcome, Geoff, to the Zoom room for Moral Fairground. Thanks for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Geoff, I'm sure that most people are familiar with the brand Intrepid Travel, but take us through a little bit of the story of Intrepid's stand around animal tourism. I'm figuring that's where most people may have heard about you. Back in 2014, can you take us through that story a little bit?
Sure. So our not-for-profit, the Intrepid Foundation, paid for World Animal Protection to do a study into the use of animals in tourism in Thailand. And they studied they looked at about 120 establishments which used animals such as elephants, tigers and primates in tourism. And out of those establishments, only I think 7 or 8 treated the animals at all humane way. And so from that, we decided that we shouldn't be doing elephant riding because the elephants weren't treated humanely and they shouldn't be in captivity, and many, many other things about the elephants. And so that created a great debate within the company about whether we should stop it or not. And how quickly we should stop it, which was great to have that debate. But so what we did, we took elephant riding out of some of our trips and left it in some to see what impact it had on the demand for those trips. And in fact, it didn't have any impact on demand. And so therefore, we took elephant riding out of all our trips in Thailand and Nepal and India and Sri Lanka, where the Asian elephants are used. And that was great. And it just sort of sat there for a while. Without us publicising it too much. And then about 2 years later, we decided it was time to start telling the world about it. So we started publicising it and writing blogs about it and taking journalists to see alternative parks that you could do things with elephants other than elephant riding. And it started to take off after that, and a few other tour operators started stopping elephant riding. World Animal Protection, who we were working with, then had a project to get travellers to make a pledge not to use any animals in tourism that they were going to, which was really great. And more and more tour operators gradually stopped, and it was gaining momentum. And then a big thing came when TripAdvisor agreed to stop having the review of elephant riding establishments on their website, which is great. And so it's actually grown now beyond elephant riding to the use of animals in tourism, and so it's becoming a bigger and bigger issue. And it's things like tigers, going and patting tigers, because those tigers are usually drugged. So we shouldn't be doing that. And canned hunting of lions in Africa is another one, not to mention whales and dolphins being in captivity in aquariums. So all these things are getting debated more and more and becoming issues and happening less and less, which is fantastic to see. So I guess we led and got all that happening. And it's been a great benefit to us because it's attracted people to the brand. Journalists, whenever there's an issue around the world involving elephants, journalists ring us because they see us as being the experts in elephants. And it's a really good case of purpose beyond profit, of us having a purpose, investing in that purpose, which isn't about making money, but it has come back to benefit us in the longer term. So it's been a really good social issue to address, and we've put effort into it, but it's been beneficial for the company.
I can really see it as a great social enterprise case study of staying the course with values that are aligned with the company's vision and having that be seen as leadership in the community, and that, what a wonderful impact to have had on the industry globally. I know there's other ways that Intrepid's regarded as an environmentally and socially conscious enterprise. Can you take us through that a little bit? What other areas I'm familiar with that travel should benefit the places it touches, and that's something I've read on your website. I can imagine that's something that's close to your heart.
Yes, I guess it is. It's all tied up with the style of travel we do. So we travel in small groups of, average around 10 or 12 people. And we travel in a country using local transport as much as possible. So its infrastructure already exists. So it's not that country having to provide infrastructure just for us or as tourists. It's staying in small, locally owned hotels and guest houses that aren't owned by multinational brands who are going to be taking all the money out of that country, all the profits out of that country. And it's I guess, it's getting off the beaten track and going to places where there's a much more capacity to interact with local people, which means that the money we're spending when we go there is being spent with very small local businesses, and it's money that is staying within those communities. So it's tourism that benefits small communities, because tourism too often isn't beneficial to the communities where it's utilised, because you might have a big resort that is owned by a multinational company and doesn't employ that many local people, doesn't buy local food, and so it's just this thing that's plonked there, but it isn't of enough benefit. So tourism really needs to benefit local communities, because there is always some sort of impact in local communities. There'll be positive impact and there'll be some negative impact, but it's really got to contribute. And so I guess that's what we're doing in our style of travel.
It's really heartening. Thank you, Geoff. And I'm wondering, I have a number of friends who are quite supportive of the sort of reconnect to Aboriginal culture in this country, and I wonder if you'd say a little bit about the Olcala project and
Sure.
how Intrepid's creating opportunities to really connect with Aboriginals.
So the Olcala people, they come from Cape York, and I was fortunate enough about 3 or 4 years ago to experience the handover of their land from our government back to them, which is an amazing amount of land. It was about 400,000 hectares of land, their traditional land, which was given back to them, and that was a very moving experience to see that. And the Olcala knew at that time that they then had to utilise that land, and it already had mining on the land, so they made a commitment to not renew any mining leases on their land, and they had planned to use their land for agriculture, tourism, and carbon capture through low temperature burning off, which is sort of something that needs explained, but it's burning off the land at low temperature rather than having bushfires, which do much more damage. And so through the Australian Conservation Foundation, we created a relationship with them to help them to develop their tourism business. And quite often, Indigenous communities around the world will be given some money to develop a tourism business, and it might be just developing a guest house or a lodge of some sort, and then there's an expectation that the tourists will just come. But it doesn't work, because the really hard part of our industry is the distribution, is getting the people. So what we were able to do is work with them to say, what sort of things could they offer for our tourists, and also for us sort of to say what sort of things our tourists would like to do with them, so that the products that they created, we were confident we would be able to sell. And so we talked with them over 12 or 18 months about planning this, and with ACF contributing through their expertise as well of ensuring that whatever was done would be protecting the environment and things. And so we put together a product with them, which was great. But then we also had to work with them to teach them how to run a tourism business, because it wasn't as though they knew that part of it at all, and how to run some accommodation, a little bit of accommodation, and what facilities the tourists would need on their land. So it was quite a broad-ranging project to get it going. And but the trips that we took out there, were just quite magical, and people had really special experiences. And especially as the Ocala people hadn't spent time on the land themselves, so they were still discovering things for themselves. So that made it really exciting. Like, one of the groups that went there found a sacred site that the elders knew existed, but they'd never come across it or never seen it. And the group found it at the same time as the elders. So they had quite amazing experiences like that. But it's not as though we were trying to provide all the tourism business they could possibly handle. We couldn't do that. So we were trying to make a basis of the tourism business for them to then grow it and find other types of tourism to be able to have a full business. So yeah, it was a great experience to do that. And Indigenous tourism is sort of just there ready to take off, I think, for both for Australians and overseas guests. And so we're trying to dabble in other small projects around the country to create the opportunity for communities to get involved in an industry that can be really beneficial to them.
And I'm really inspired by that. And the other thing that sort of that it speaks to me about is this possibility of really contributing through our business choices to well-being in a really broad spectrum sense. Tell me, would you have any sort of advice or commentary for ethical and social well-being businesses that are just in startup? What would you recommend given some of your experience?
I guess really to have a focus on all the stakeholders that are going to be involved in the business. So obviously your customer is really, really important, especially for a new business. You really need to have a focus on what the customer needs and wants, because sometimes it's very easy for a business to get slightly diverted into what's best or easiest for them as a business. And so you need to be bringing yourself back all the time to the customer and what it is that the customer wants. But then there are other people who are impacted by it as well, so other stakeholders. And it might be, for us, it's obviously the places that we visit is a very important part of it. But for another business, it might be the suppliers. And so it's ensuring that your suppliers are treated in a fair manner and that they're getting a fair reward for the work that they're doing. So business too often has been seen as a win-lose situation, and there's that war analogy which is used in business, which is someone winning and someone losing. It doesn't need to be like that. It can be win-win-win. So it's not just your suppliers, it's also your suppliers' suppliers and all the way down this supply chain. And that's where, fair trade is really great, because, they work to assist businesses to ensure that the whole supply chain is gaining the reward that it needs to gain to have a viable, continual, sustainable business. So I think that's a really important one to have within a new business right from the very start.
Yes, thanks, Geoff. I'm remembering you're on a panel on Friday at the Ethical Enterprise Conference called Starting and Growing a Conscious Business. So I'm guessing that for those who are interested, they can come along and hear some more about what it takes to build and grow a conscious business. And so we'll look forward to that. Is there anything more that in terms of business building and community support that you think we can do in the social enterprise sector to support each other?
Look, I think there's been so many examples in Australia, and I guess all around the world, of businesses behaving really badly, to the extent now that capitalism has a really poor name. And in reality, capitalism is the best system we've ever had in the world and has taken more people out of poverty. So what we really need to be doing is strengthening capitalism by showing that business can be a force for good in the world. And I think for social enterprises, given that they're starting from that motivation that's not about making money, they're in a really good position to really show that there is another way. And whether it is a for-profit or not-for-profit business, it's leading the way in showing that capitalism can be a force for good, and allowing consumers to vote with their feet and vote with their money to show that that's where they want to spend the money, because that's increasingly what we're seeing happening, and we in the years to come, that's increasingly going to be what does happen.